Straight ahead, a 12 News special.
If you want to do it, you have to really focus on it.
Against the odds, stories of triumph and inspiration. Meet people who have taken on big challenges, like swimming the English Channel or battling disease.
It's very emotional that she would be giving up a portion of her body for me so that I could survive.
Against the odds, next on 12 News. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Over the past few months, we've met remarkable people who are determined to take on challenges despite the odds.
Now, these are stories of triumph and inspiration. This summer, a Plymouth woman attempted to join an elite group. Since 1875, fewer than 2,000 people have completed a swim across the English Channel. Reporter Shannon Slatton introduces us to Karen Emlyn, who has had her eyes set on the channel for the last 8 years.
When I started in this experience, I was like, yikes, this is a big task and a lot to learn.
When Karen Emlyn swims, she goes the extra mile.
If you want to do it, you have to really focus on it.
She sharpened her focus on a new challenge after watching her then 68-year-old father try to swim the English Channel.
He was doing a training swim across Lake Mille Lacs, and I knew that if I didn't do the swim with him, I would have to be on the boat that long. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do the swim with him.
Rough waves ended her father's attempt in 2007.
It's like, wow, the English Channel is a beast.
But Karen now knew she wanted to try.
That's why we decided it was kind of a priority right now. It's because it just gets harder as you age.
With her husband Tom at her side, Karen set off learning how to be a channel swimmer. She logged hours in the pool and raced on Lake Minnetonka. She swam around Madeline Island and around Manhattan. She swam through heavy seaweed off the coast of California and did an out and back swim to Alcatraz. When she came home,
I have some friends that have cabin on Mille Lacs, and they allowed me to use their cabin and train in Mille Lacs until Mille Lacs warmed up too much, and then I could just head up to Superior for the day.
Karen knew distance wouldn't be the problem, but the cold would.
The only thing that was going to keep her from getting across the channel was freezing out.
She trained for 2 weeks in Dover before setting off on July 31st for the big swim.
I'm always swimming towards France, but as the water is changing direction, so the tide is all getting pushed, the current is all coming this way, and I'm getting pushed.
She was strong through currents and even through jellyfish.
The ones you hit, you don't see. But there was plenty out there that I saw, too many to count.
But after 12 hours in the water, the cold was too much to bear.
It's getting dark, it's getting colder, it's not getting warmer. She's starting to shut down.
I didn't think I'd crumble mentally, and I didn't crumble mentally. I was going to get to France. And it was right there.
It was absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, especially because we were right there. I mean, it was right. You could see the bushes, you could see the rocks, it was right there.
Karen's support team knew she couldn't make it through the tough currents near shore.
We put a towel around under her arms and lifted her up.
Karen doesn't remember much about that moment.
She was already on the boat for probably about 5 minutes. And she said, "Don't touch me, you'll disqualify me."
And only later realized how close she came.
As she started to warm up a little bit, she all of a sudden just says, "Shoot, darn."
Strong and capable, to the point that a week later, before she came home,
I just see some people with swim caps entering the water, and I'm like, what? There's a swim going on?
She ended her British adventure swimming one more time.
To be allowed to try that out was a real gift.
In Plymouth, Shannon Slatton, 12 News.
Karen is still involved with swimming, and she competes with a swim club in Hopkins. There have only been 53 successful solo swims across the English Channel this year. Well, we met a veteran this summer who was also on a long swim for a worthy purpose. Chris Ring set out to swim the entire length of the Mississippi River. He was doing it to help keep the memory of fallen service members alive. He started at the headwaters at Itasca State Park, and with more than 2,000 miles behind him, Chris expects to reach the Gulf of Mexico this weekend. Along the way, Gold Star families sign a kayak that went with Chris downstream. The name served as an inspiration when the going got tough.
Whenever I'm having a rough day or when I'm at a tough spot, I can look up, see these names and remember these stories, and I know that whatever I'm going through is nothing compared to what these families have suffered.
Chris says the biggest challenge has been navigating through harbors with major shipping traffic.
A Crystal woman who is working to reunite soldiers took on a vicious firefight in Afghanistan.
Yeah, Mary Henry's son is one of those who survived the ordeal at Combat Outpost Keating near the border with Pakistan. She now hopes to bring his unit together again in Minnesota next summer.
This is a group shot after the battle.
It was a battle in which Mary Henry's son, Eric Harder, and 52 other members of his cavalry regiment were outnumbered by the Taliban almost 10-1.
They fought for 12 hours. They lost 8 of their guys. How do you tell people about that? How do you sit in a room with people and they just are supposed to get what you've been through?
Their outpost, or COP as the military calls it, was built on low ground in a river valley. In addition to numbers, the enemy had a tactical advantage.
They said that this battle was very organized for the Taliban, that they could get that many together, and they were on all 3 sides of the COP.
If you could talk with us a little bit about what happened in Afghanistan. We asked a former soldier who was there to explain what that day was like.
They hit us bright and early at dawn, right when the sun was coming up.
Tom Rasmussen spoke to us via Skype from his home in Colorado.
Some of the closest fighting I've ever seen, in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was, guys 15, 20 feet away, shooting at each other, and they'd made it onto the COP.
Just to survive that as a group is really pretty remarkable.
It's a brotherhood that nobody will ever understand unless you were there. And it's so intense and it's so tight that there's nothing that can break it.
This group last came together at the White House as one soldier was awarded the Medal of Honor. Now Mary is working to bring them to Minnesota for a reunion.
Because I've heard how some of them have struggled since then. It'll be 6 years in October. People tend to forget. Nobody understands them like each other. And I just thought, why are we waiting on this? Why don't we do this?
Mary hopes to raise $40,000 for travel and other expenses for a reunion that is scheduled for early June.
A Robbinsdale man was in a fight for survival with the help of his wife, and she wasn't just there for moral support.
Reporter Sonia Goen shows us how his wife played a key part in the process.
You get married and you have some kids and you raise them, and then you work towards retirement. So in your golden years, you can enjoy life.
26 years ago, John and Janet Tracy gave their hearts to each other.
I can't imagine, my life without him.
Now the two are exchanging the ultimate gift, the gift of life.
Of course, it's a double-edged sword. You're taking an organ from your wife, and you hope for her to live as long as she possibly can, as long as she can. So but then again, it's saving my life.
Janet is in line to donate a kidney to John. It's extremely rare. The odds are 1 in 100,000.
I guess I feel kind of silly. It's like, this is such a big deal, but it's like, why wouldn't you? It's your spouse.
It was very emotional that she would be giving up a portion of her body for me so that I could survive. And that's a real hard thing to deal with.
John has diabetes, and his kidney started failing him about a year ago.
And they said, well, we need to talk dialysis. And it was like, oh, really?
Now, John is really lucky. It takes a long time to get a kidney donation. And without that, he'd have to do dialysis. And he could be on that for the rest of his life.
His condition has brought his life to a standstill.
Well, I don't do as many things as I used to do.
He can't do the one thing he really loves to do, play the bass guitar.
My passion is the blues. I've played that for many, many years.
Dialysis has stopped the music.
I even played with Jimmy Jam in the very beginning.
John is grateful for the help and wants to get back to living life.
Hopefully after this is done, I can get back into the scene and still play some more.
Sonia Goins, 12 News.
The procedure was done back in June, and we checked back with John and Janet, and the news is good. After some trouble with an early rejection and about 6 weeks of recovery, John says he's doing very well. His wife was back at work just a few days after the surgery. Coming up, it's a whole new world for one local teenager.
And later, a story of triumph as a student athlete fought back against a serious injury. You're watching a 12 News special, Against the Odds, stories of triumph and inspiration.
Welcome back. A local teenager knows a thing or two about challenges.
Cortez Yamada is thriving at Brooklyn Center High School, but it wasn't long ago this teenager was living in a completely different world.
Right? Like, it's meant to be so theoretical that, like, you can't even wrap your brain around it anyway.
In a high-level discussion on theory of knowledge, 17-year-old senior Cortez Yamada is right at home.
And people keep doing answering them with different theories and getting different answers.
It's remarkable when you consider Cortez's home is actually a small island in the Pacific Ocean south of the Philippines.
I moved here 2 years ago, so I'm still new to the U.S. So I'm still getting used to everything and the cultural change. So it's a big change.
In Palau, a Peace Corps worker saw Cortez's potential and brought him to Minnesota for opportunities.
He comes from a country where minimum wage is really, really low. Finding a job is really difficult.
School back home, my elementary school, we had 23 students from 1st to 8th grade. It was really small, and I didn't really learn English till I moved here 2 years ago, so I'm still kind of learning it. Boom.
No. Not only learning English, he's also taking Spanish and has nearly straight A's while taking college-level courses as an international baccalaureate diploma candidate. He's also athletic, rising quickly to varsity for wrestling and track.
He is an amazing, amazing person.
Right now, the focus for Cortez is clear.
Scholarships, good grades, and then into college.
He wants to become an engineer and perhaps serve in the military. He knows the opportunities he has here can ultimately benefit his family back in Palau.
He will be good for the world. Wherever he goes, he will make a difference in the world.
Coming up, an injury that could have kept one athlete off the field for the whole season.
We'll show you how she fought back and then made a difference. We'll be right back. As we cover local athletes, we find out there is often more to the story than what fans see on the field.
That is the case with a Wayzata soccer player who battled back from a serious injury to put her team in the state tournament. Jason Melillo has the inspiring story of Bailey Hyde and how she fought back.
It's nice to see Bailey Hyde happy on a soccer field.
You know, I guess you could say that, you know, I wonder how her dad feels, because I kind of feel like that proud parent as well, to see someone that, you know, had a bad injury and from where they were and from where they've got to, and then, you know, her desire and her ability to work hard, get back to where she's not just playing, she's a key contributor on the team.
Less than a year ago, the Wayzata midfielder tore her ACL at a tournament in Las Vegas.
They had grass fields, and I was backing up to track the ball in the air, and when I backed up, my foot went into a hole, and I just heard this like loud popping sound, and because we had 2 ACL tears last year, high school season, I kind of knew the noise already. So I like looked at my mom and I said, my ACL's torn, and of course she was like, no, don't say that, don't say that. But I went to TRIA when we flew home, and it was completely torn in half.
The injury was painful and demoralizing, but Hyde dedicated herself to getting better.
Initially they said that playing high school season wouldn't be a possibility because that would only be at 7 months, and they normally don't clear till 9 or 8 or 9. But then I got back from a vacation and I did the functional test, and I was at 4 months and I tested at 8.
You know, they tell you that there's a window of whatever, 6 to 9 months and somewhere in there, and of course the people like Bailey, they're going to want to push it right to get there to 6 months.
Some people around Hyde told her not to push it, to just accept she would miss her senior season. But as her rehab progressed, Hyde started to have little doubt that she would play for the Trojans this fall.
Because with the ACL, the anatomy of it, it takes a full year for the ACL to completely be developed. And so they were saying by 7 months, it's not completely developed, and your risk of re-tearing, it's 52%. And they're throwing these percentages at me, and I kept saying, okay, well, obviously I'm not the average patient because I'm at 4 months and I'm testing at 8. So obviously I'm defying some of these statistics. And so when they finally did clear me, you know, my surgeon just laughed and said, you were pushy, but you pushed the right buttons. So I pushed my boundaries a little bit, but just enough to the point I needed to be at.
Hyde's redemption was crystallized when she scored probably the biggest goal of the season for Wayzata, a beautiful left-footed strike in overtime that beat Minneapolis Washburn and sent the Trojans back to state after a 2-year hiatus.
You never want anyone to go through this, and to just get back on the field was even a blessing in itself, but to be able to score and have that just fulfillment of coming back, it really was the icing on the cake.
Wayzata's season came to an end with a loss in the first round of the state tournament, but it was certainly a triumph for Bailey Hyde just to play in her senior year. Remarkable.
Yeah, really neat.
Coming up, a story of perseverance.
It involves a wrestler who's faced much more than just opponents on the mat. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Against the Odds, stories of triumph and inspiration.
Yeah, a Park Center graduate has grappled with adversity far beyond his years, but he persevered. Reporter Shannon Slatton explains how he now has a family to help him out.
Let's go, Melvin. Right away, kid. Let's go.
There's a place athletes go, a place of focus, of concentration.
30, Melvin, 30.
A place fans' voices can't penetrate. It's where hours of practice come through for a win.
Attaboy, Melvin!
And it's a place Melvin Golson likes to be.
Good work, kid. And he's got better. He placed third last year, just missed going to the state tournament last year.
But this year could be Melvin's chance.
His strengths are his quickness and his toughness.
Toughness is something Melvin has had to learn on the mat and off.
Mostly I was just like moving from houses to houses, and it was kind of tough.
Melvin doesn't talk about his past much. He came from Liberia when he was around 7 years old with people who weren't his parents.
It was kind of like a family member. That's what I believe.
Over the years, he crashed on couches, slept in parks, and hid his rough home life.
It was really not as home like people would thought it was.
Then he started wrestling.
Just this little tiny kid coming out and was really good in wrestling and really quiet and
so cute.
And he met the Farrells.
We would take trips with wrestling, and so we kind of always like sponsored him. We always felt something for him, like he's just a neat kid.
As John and Tara learned his story and spent more time with him, they wanted to bring him into their loud, fun family.
It's natural. It's not like we have to try to be a family.
So after a long court process, they became his guardians.
We don't say we're his guardians, we're his parents.
We're his parents.
When I was there, I feel like, safe and secure and stuff like that. I just feel like this is a place I want to be.
Good work, Melvin. Good work.
The family is all here for Melvin at sectionals.
Still got a chance. He can come back.
And it's a close one.
Keep working, Melvin.
It comes down to the last 2 seconds. Right after the last match of Melvin's high school career.
It's okay. Proud of you, right?
Away from our camera and away from the stands, his family is there.
You did awesome.
And there's no place Melvin would rather be.
Love you, bud.
In Osseo, Shannon Slatton, 12 News.
Since this story first aired earlier this year, Melvin has graduated high school and is now working in construction. A great story of support when you need it the most.
Absolutely. Love to hear those follow-ups.
Absolutely. That's it for now. Thanks so much for joining us for this special edition of 12 News.
This was Against the Odds, stories of triumph and inspiration. We wish you a happy and safe holiday weekend.